Now, programming from the Illinois Channel, an independent, nonpartisan corporation formed to provide nonpartisan coverage of Illinois state government and other public affairs events taking place across Illinois. For more information on the Illinois Channel, please visit our website at www.illinoischannel.org.
Just ahead, Republican members of the legislature hold a press conference in which they say members of the Democratic Party will try to institute a progressive income tax instead of the state's current flat tax. Then at about 12 minutes from now, we hear from Illinois Congresswoman Tammy Duckworth as she discusses immigration reform and how to reduce some of the burdensome paperwork on small businesses. Then at about 25 minutes from now, our contributing correspondent Jeff Berkowitz talks with Kristen McQuery of the Chicago Tribune editorial board. We hear how the Tribune decides what editorials will be written and who will write them. We also hear about the Tribune's philosophical approach to public policy issues. And finally, in about 55 minutes from now, from the Illinois School Board Association annual conference, we hear a panel discussion on how new technology is being implemented in the classroom. That's all just ahead after this brief note.
The Illinois Channel salutes our advisory council members, leaders in business, education, law, medicine, and other fields from across Illinois.
Hi, I'm Delitso Solomoyo, President of the Illinois Association of Community Action Agencies. We are an organization of 36 member agencies located around Illinois which provide needed services to our fellow citizens. It may be helping provide services at a homeless shelter, or helping to provide affordable utilities to low-income people across Illinois through such programs as the Low-Income Home Energy Assistance Program, better known as LIHEAP, or working with rural communities and helping them maintain needed community infrastructure. These are just a few of the many services provided by Illinois' community action agencies. But to provide these services efficiently and effectively, we need solid information. That's why, in addition to heading the Illinois Association of Community Action Agencies, I am also proud to serve on the Illinois Channel's Advisory Council. I have watched the Illinois Channel for years. It provides serious coverage of the Illinois legislature, public policy discussions, and one-on-one interviews with leaders from across Illinois. It's the kind of solid, in-depth information all of us need to get beyond partisan politics and political spin and just hear directly what's happening, what's being proposed, and why. I know and you know that Illinois is filled with good people. But if we are to have good, effective public policies, we need to base those on good information. We get that from the Illinois Channel. That's why I watch it, and I hope you will too. The Illinois Channel, it works for all of us.
Next from Chicago, Republican members of the House and Senate meet to discuss the effort by some to create a progressive income tax in Illinois. Currently, Illinois has a flat income tax. A progressive income tax would tax those earning more and at a higher rate. We hear why they say this would make Illinois less competitive when compared to many other states. This runs about 15 minutes.
Good afternoon. It feels good to be under these warm lights. My name is Joseph Henchman, and I'm Vice President for State Projects at the Tax Foundation in Washington, D.C. It's a pleasure to be here and to be joined by so many high-ranking officials. After me will be speaking a colleague of mine, Lyman Stone, State Representative David McSweeney, State Representative Ron Sandak, and State Senator Mike Connolly. It's a great pleasure to be joined by all of you here today. For those who aren't familiar, the Tax Foundation is the nation's leading independent state tax policy research organization. Since 1937, our principled research, insightful analysis, and engaged experts have informed smarter tax policy at the federal, state, and local levels. Our Center for State Tax Policy, which I run, tracks state tax trends all over the country and provides tools for policymakers and taxpayers to understand their state tax systems. One of these tools is our annual State Business Tax Climate Index. Released each fall, the index evaluates over 100 variables in state tax policy, looking at all of the major taxes important to business climate and job creation. Individual income taxes, corporate income taxes, sales taxes, unemployment insurance taxes, and property taxes. The index provides an objective way to compare states and a roadmap for improving state tax competitiveness. At the request of some of the officials in the room, we looked at the impact of a potential progressive income tax on Illinois' index score. And to share some of the findings on that is my colleague at the Tax Foundation, economist Lyman Stone. Lyman?
As Joe said, my name is Lyman Stone, and I'm an economist at the Tax Foundation's Center for State Tax Policy. And I'm just going to briefly run over some of the key findings from the report that we've just published today, actually. We find that if Illinois had implemented the progressive income tax with the rates suggested, which is a 7-bracket system and a top rate of 9%, which would be one of the highest in the nation, that its score on our State Business Tax Climate Index would actually have fallen from 31st to 44th, which is a pretty steep drop, especially when you consider that as of 2011, Illinois was ranked 17th, and it fell quite a few places in response to the tax hikes in 2011 that are set to expire at the beginning of next year. That significant drop from 31st to 44th may raise some questions. Why does one change to a single tax have such a significant effect? The answer is that higher and progressive income taxes can have uniquely damaging effects on economic growth and ultimately lead to some pretty unfair consequences for Illinois taxpayers. Specifically, higher taxes discourage work, and especially they discourage increasing work and pursuing opportunities to increase your productivity, whether that means going back to school, working for a bonus or a promotion, or taking extra hours. And when those discouragements of work and production occur, it's worse for the economy. And with Illinois' economy already struggling somewhat, a higher tax probably isn't a good deal for Illinois taxpayers. Maybe a particularly telling example of this can be a brief comparison between the last few years in the history of Illinois versus your close neighbor, Indiana. As of 2011, at the beginning of 2011, Indiana and Illinois had very similar tax rates, very similar income taxes, very similar corporate taxes, and both of them were in a hard place from the recession, though they both started to show some recovery. However, as we all know, in 2011, Illinois raised its corporate income tax to 9.5% and its personal income tax to 5%. Indiana, on the other hand, began a round of tax cuts, which has continued to this day. So the question is, have their economic performances diverged? And the answer is yes. As several credit ratings agencies have made clear, there are some concerns about the future direction of Illinois' economy. Meanwhile, Indiana's job growth has accelerated and outpaced Illinois'. So with that kind of divergence, obviously many factors are in play there, but the tax code certainly can affect growth. It can support it or inhibit it. So with those as our key findings, I'll introduce State Representative David McQuery, who I believe has some remarks as well.
Let's make no mistake about it. What we're here today is to talk about the largest tax increase in the history of the state of Illinois. It's going to hit families. It's going to hit small businesses. We have 8.7% unemployment in this state. That is a moral outrage. We are 2 percentage points higher than the national average. We are killing jobs in this state by raising taxes. They promised us a couple years ago when they raised taxes by 67% that they would use the money to pay down debt. We have $7 billion of unpaid bills. They didn't tell the truth. These taxes will be used to fuel additional spending, and they will hurt families in this state. This will be the #1 issue this year. The Democrats and the Madigan machine are already lined up to try to pass a tax increase. And today we're talking about a 9% top tax rate. There is another proposal by the Democrats with an 11% top tax rate. That will drive jobs out of this state. We need to stop it. And that's why we're here today, to tell you, as Republicans in the House and the Senate, we are united against this tax increase. We need to cut spending in Springfield, not raise taxes. If we want to raise revenue in this state, the best way to do that is by cutting tax rates, creating more jobs. And to quote my friend Tom Morrison, we need more taxpayers. We need more taxpayers by creating new jobs. And we are here today, again, united. And I want to introduce some of my House members who are here united in support of what we're doing in stopping this tax increase. Representative Jeannie Ives has been there from the beginning. She ran on this issue during the campaign. She has been an articulate spokesperson. Darlene Sanger is on the Pensions Committee, has led the effort and over again in her campaign, and what she said on the House floor, fought this tooth and nail. Senators Murphy and Connolly, give them a lot of credit. In one day, they'll end up all Republicans in the Senate. One day. So they are tax fighters, and they deserve a great deal of credit. You're going to hear from Representative Sandek. Ed Sullivan is a very important member in this whole situation. Ed is on the Revenue Committee with me, and he has been leading the fight on the Revenue Committee against the progressive income tax. John Anthony is a very promising member of our caucus, a new member who has become one of our leaders and has been fighting the progressive income tax. Again, we're talking about a tax increase. We also have Tom Morrison, who I mentioned. And Tom is one of our rising stars also, and somebody who has fought this. And another very important person is here on behalf of leadership, and that's our deputy leader, Representative Patty Belloc. And Patty, I'm sure, will tell you and is committed that leadership is committed that no Republican is going to vote for this proposal. And remember, they need 71 to pass this constitutional amendment, to pass this tax increase. They're going to dress it up and call it tax fairness. This is a tax increase that will kill jobs. Make no mistake about it. No Republican will vote for this, and we are going to make sure that's happened. And I also want to say that we have one Democrat, Jack Franks, who has, even as late as last night, said that he's opposed to this. So if we keep Jack Franks and we keep all 47 Republicans, we could defeat this travesty. So we are here united. We are standing strong. We are standing firm. We are going to 100% fight this tax increase. No Republican will support this. Representative Belloc is going to make sure of that. And thank you very much. Now I want to introduce Ron Sandak, who's also one of the original lead sponsors on this proposal. Thank you, Ron.
It's kind of hard to follow Representative McSweeney after that rousing and very articulate call to action. I'm Ron Sandak. I'm the state representative from the 81st District, and I'm actually speaking on my behalf and also on behalf of Minority Leader Jim Durkins, who wanted me to clarify and make absolutely no bones about it. The House Republican caucus will put no votes on a progressive income tax. We will not partner with nor be a participant in any endeavor to raise taxes in the state of Illinois. David articulated quite well why that's a mistake, and the Economist actually gave us, is there a misery income tax or a misery tax or quota for Illinois? Because ours keeps going up while others, including the states most in proximity to us, Wisconsin, Indiana, Missouri, Iowa particularly, continue to grow and grow their way out of economic difficulties. We're stagnant. So the House Republicans will not vote on a progressive income tax. They'll get 0 votes from us. If Representative Franks continues on, I think it's a dead item. I will let you know that, in case folks are confused, this is not happening in a vacuum. This shift, this idea of moving to a progressive or graduated income tax comes out of a frustration. I was actually with Senator Murphy in those days, and Michael Connolly and I switched places. I witnessed at breathtaking speed the midnight tax increase the Democrats put on us, and as a brand new member of the General Assembly, it was breathtaking how orchestrated it was. It was in the Senate side at about 1:37 in the next morning, actually the last day of the 96th Legislative General Assembly. And of course the promise from the Senate floor was, we've got $8 billion in unpaid bills. This tax increase is temporary and will go to address those bills. And as you heard Representative McSweeney say, that's not the case. Illinois doesn't have a revenue problem, ladies and gentlemen. It's got a spending problem. We've never had more money in the state coffers than right now. We've never brought in more revenue than right now, yet we still can't seem to find our way towards anywhere close to a balanced budget or fiscal sanity. Giving the state more money is an exercise in futility. It's insane. There's no way it should happen. This is a tax increase that the House Republicans will fight tooth and nail. And I suspect strongly that same call to action occurs with my colleagues on the other side of the rotunda. And with that, I have the pleasure of introducing my good friend, Senator Michael Connolly.
Thank you, Ron. I represent Western DuPage County, along with Representative Ives and Representative Sanger. We represent towns like Wheaton, Naperville, Lisle, a lot of young professional, middle-class, dual-income households where they're trying to balance family, their professions, and paying their bills, paying their property taxes, and keeping their kids, in a good environment and in a state where they have a future. And time again, and I know Darlene and Jeannie would agree with me, we heard over and over the last few months, Mike, we're leaving. We're out of here. When my kids graduate from Naperville, you fill in the blank, Naperville Central, Wheaton, Warrenville South, Bennett Academy, we're getting out of here. You've done a great job. Thanks for what you're doing. For the past 2 years, I've been telling people wherever I go, they're not done. They're going to push a progressive income tax. They're not done taxing you. And I am frightened, frankly, at how few people in the state know about this push. And it's an organized push, to be sure. I like to speak in anecdotes, and I'll give you one that is really telling. I have a constituent whose daughter is a senior in college. She'll graduate with a chemical engineering degree, and she's going to grad school. And she's applied to grad schools all over the country. And 2 schools in particular have made a point of really recruiting her like she's a 5-star linebacker. One's a private school and a private university in Nashville, Tennessee. You can figure out who that is. And the other's a large public university in Austin, Texas. And the father of this child told me what's interesting is the tone that they're using in recruiting their daughter, which is, Illinois is done. Illinois is through. We're the future. Come to Texas. Get a head start. Your friends are coming here. They'll be here sooner than you think. And the same with Tennessee, a growing state, a growing private sector economy. As a lifelong Illinoisan, I'm appalled by that. I'm embarrassed by that. This is a fight, frankly, for the economic soul of this state. It's a fight we've got to win, and I'm proud of my caucus and the stance we took. And with that, I'll turn it over to my deputy leader, my friend, State Senator Matt Murphy, to say a little bit about our caucus's position on this.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, David, as well, for and all of the rest of the colleagues here for their leadership on the issue, as well as our friends in the private sector who have done a great job of highlighting this problem. We have in the Senate, similar to Representative McSweeney's effort in the House, Senate Resolution 383 that I have sponsored with Senator Connolly, and all 19 Senate Republicans have signed on in support of maintaining our flat tax. We have been asking our friends on the other side of the aisle to sign on to the resolution. To this point, none has been willing to do so. I think at this point, given recent history, it would be fair for people in this state to ask of the ruling Democrats, how much of our money is enough? At what point do you feel like you have enough money to do whatever the hell it is you want to do? Can you just give us a number, please? Because as Senator Connolly pointed out, other states are actively recruiting not just our businesses but our talent. And talent's been one of the things that has separated Illinois from other states, particularly in the Midwest. Look at the history. Look at the impact of the tax increases. This is another tax increase. There's no question about it. The people who are saying it's not are the very people who said, like Governor Quinn, I'll veto any tax increase that takes the rate above 4. Took them all about 5 seconds to sign one that took it to 5. They have no credibility on the issue. This is a tax increase, period. What happened the last time they did? What happened the last time the Democrats passed a tax increase in the state? We were a state in 2010 that for much of the year had an unemployment rate that was actually lower than the national average. Representative McSweeney just gave you the numbers. We're now 4th highest in the country. We are 2 points higher than the national average. The only substantive policy change in the interim passed by the Illinois General Assembly on the issue was a 67% income tax hike. People lost their jobs because the Illinois Democrats couldn't handle living off of what was already record revenue. Now they want to do it again. How hard do they have to make it for the middle class in this state to survive. How many times are they going to go after the jobs of the very people who make Illinois what it is? They're driving jobs out of the state. They're driving people out of the state. This has got to stop. At a certain point, you've got to look at the numbers and say, what you've been doing for 11 years of total Democrat, total control isn't working. Since the Democrats took total control in 2003, poverty in this state is up a third. Who's hurting the poor? It isn't the Republicans, it's the Democrats. Spending. Representative Sandak made the point. We don't have a revenue problem. We're taking in $35 billion this year. Illinois taxpayers have never given anywhere close to that amount of money to their state government. When the Democrats took total control of state government back in 2003, if they'd have grown spending by the rate of inflation plus 1% for population growth, even though we didn't have any, if they'd have done that, our budget this year would be $4 billion lower than it is right now. We would have spent $35 billion less over the last decade while outstripping inflation with our spending. We could have had zero deficit. We would have had no tax increase and no corresponding loss in jobs. There is a different picture. There's a different way forward. It is not more of the same, higher taxes, more spending that has failed us for 11 years. It's a different approach that says spend less, get your cost of doing business down, tackle your long-term financial problems, and then market what this great state could be like crazy and provide opportunity for the good people who still live here. That's what this can be, but it's only going to be that if ludicrous ideas like a progressive income tax go down in flames like they should. I sincerely hope our friends on the other side of the aisle in the Senate will come to their senses and realize they're risking their own constituents' jobs with nonsense like this. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. Thank you all for your leadership on this, and I'm happy to turn it back over to the taxpayers.
You're watching the Illinois Channel, an independent nonprofit corporation formed to provide gavel-to-gavel coverage of Illinois state government and other public affairs events taking place across Illinois.
Next, from Elk Grove, Illinois, Congresswoman Tammy Duckworth talks about issues coming up in Congress, including immigration reform and the Troop Talent Act. This runs about 12 minutes.
Hello and welcome to this month's edition of In the Grove. Thank you so much for joining us. You know, it's not every day that you have a very, very special guest like Congresswoman Tammy Duckworth from the 8th Congressional District come and visit us at our studios. We're very pleased to have Congresswoman Duckworth with us. Thank you so much for being here today.
It's my pleasure.
I mentioned to you before when we sat down that I was amazed that you even had time based on what I've been reading about all the various projects that you're involved in.
I haven't done any Christmas shopping, so.
I can understand that, and everyone will just have to get over it, I guess.
Yeah, I think.
Tell us a little bit about why you're in Elk Grove, and tell us a little bit why Elk Grove, because this is an Elk Grove-based program, why Elk Grove is significant.
Well, Elk Grove is significant because it has the opportunity to lead manufacturing and our economy here, not just for the district, the 8th Congressional District, but also for the Chicagoland region, Illinois, and the entire nation. You know, Elk Grove is home to the largest industrial park in North America. It's here in Elk Grove Village.
For North America. In
North America, yeah. Also a large concentration of the tool and die manufacturers. And so for me, one of my priorities has been to reinvest in manufacturing, making sure that we grow our economy. And one of the best ways to do that is to focus on villages like Elk Grove, where you really have put in the effort to support businesses that bring dollars into the community and allow America to be competitive globally.
To be competitive globally, absolutely. And speaking of globally, there's some immigration work that's being done as well, because that goes hand in hand with populating the workforce.
Yes.
Can you speak a little bit about that?
Well, comprehensive immigration reform has several components to it, but on the economic side, about 18% of Illinois' workforce, Illinois' business owners are actually immigrants.
Really?
17% of the workers are immigrants also. And our businesses, whether they are, businesses have been around for a long time, or new businesses, really depend on these workers. Some of them are high-end, highly skilled H-1B visa types, and others are more manual labor workers. But the key thing is that these workers are needed for our economy. I'd rather they have some sort of a legal status and we know where they are so that they're paying taxes.
So that's the basis of the act.
It's a pathway to citizenship. Okay. It's a guest worker program. It's a whole range of things. It's also getting those folks who are here undocumented to pay fees, fines, and penalties for having broken the laws to be here. I think that you need to learn English if you want to become a citizen of the United States, and that's part of it. Mm-hmm. But there's a Senate bill, there's a House bill that's more conservative, more border security. It's very comprehensive, but it is something that everyone from the ACLU to the Chambers of Commerce to religious leaders to police officers all support comprehensive immigration reform. It's really good for our nation. And also, it's predicted that it will bring $1 trillion back to America's economy over 20 years if we can pass it. Yeah.
That's a lot of money in a relatively short period of time.
It is.
Absolutely.
It is.
Absolutely. Now, speaking of business owners, I read with interest, because of being a business owner myself, about the paperwork elimination.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about that. I thought that was intriguing because actually paperwork forgiveness, isn't that what it is?
Right. It's the Small Business Paperwork Reduction Act.
Okay.
It was my very first bill I introduced as a member of Congress.
Okay.
So before I introduced anything else, I did a bill for paperwork reduction. I found that in talking with businesses around the district that a lot of times small business owners really bear the burden of dealing with government. And sometimes that burden is I think it's too much. So what this bill would do is it would forgive the fees, fines, and penalties that federal government would charge a small business for just not doing your paperwork correctly the first time.
The first time.
Right. If you're dealing with the EPA, you're dealing with the FDA, you're dealing with the IRS, whoever it is that's a federal agency, if you don't do it correctly the first time, we shouldn't come down on you like a ton of bricks, right? Because you're trying your best. As long as it's not criminal, as long as it's not a safety or health violation, we should give you a chance to fix the problem. I know most business owners, in addition to being the CEO of your business, you're probably also the accountant, the HR manager, and the janitor at night and on weekends,
absolutely,
right?
Positively, and I'm the IT guy as well sometimes.
And the IT guy,
Yeah, okay.
And we should cut you a break because businesses, especially small businesses, are the engine of our economy. They're the ones who hire the most people. They're the ones who continue to innovate and grow and are really entrepreneurial, and so we should support our small businesses.
So we've talked about supporting the small businesses, and then we've talked about immigration and supporting the immigrant worker as well. And it seems as though you're looking from a global perspective with regard to what's occurring in places like Elk Grove, trying to make the pathway easier and more efficient along the way, and to look toward the future. I naturally will digress to education.
Yes.
And I want to talk about the STEM program just a little bit. Okay? Yeah. Science, technology, engineering and mathematics.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, people know my military background, right, Tom?
Of course.
And I want America to continue to dominate the world in terms of strength of our nation. And people often think of that as guns and tanks and helicopters, the military.
Okay.
But a key component of our nation's strength is our economy. And I want us to dominate the world in the economic sector as well. We're already the largest GDP. We need to continue to dominate. But the way we do that is to maintain our competitive advantage. And the way we do that is to invest in our children, is to invest in education. As we're investing in small business, we need to make sure that those small businesses have the workers who are trained, who are educated, who can go into those fields. And so I've really worked very hard to focus on STEM education, getting not just boys but girls involved in it as well. I've been working with the Girl Scout Council for this area, and they have a dozen different robotic teams for robotics competition, which are girls ages 9 to seniors in high school.
Isn't that great to see at that age?
It's fantastic.
To see anyone interested that young in what is happening on a Girl Scout level, that's amazing.
It's fantastic. I want homegrown talent. I want that talent to be here. I don't want businesses to look around and say, I want to build robots or the next generation technology or software. And I have to go to South Korea to do it because we don't have the workers. We have them right here in Elk Grove Village. And we have the educational system right here in Elk Grove Village to support that and to provide those workers for that pipeline.
Speaking of homegrown talent, something jogged in my memory, and I want to go next to the Troop Talent Act.
Yes.
Because I think that's homegrown talent. And I think what I read about it, and I'm sure you can amplify, it's the first of its kind.
It is. It's another piece of legislation that I'm introducing. It's very bipartisan, just like my Small Business Paperwork Reduction Act. Right. That's actually Senator Vitter is introducing that in the House. I mean, in the Senate. And I'm introducing in the House. This Troop Talent Act, I have over 90 co-sponsors. Wow. Everyone from Maxine Waters to Joe Wilson. I'm co-sponsoring it with, introducing it with Representative Darrell Issa.
Okay.
And what it does, it requires the military to start finding the civilian certifications for members of the military for the jobs that they hold in the military from the first day they enter.
From the get-go?
From the get-go. Because right now they're waiting until 3 months before you get out. Oh, you're a medic in the Army. Here's information on how you can get your paramedic's license.
Right.
You need to get them their paramedics license the first year that they're in the Army.
And have a 2-year jump from right, exactly. Okay.
Right. And this really came out of my husband went to.
I wanted to ask you that.
Yeah, he deployed in the transportation with a transportation company in the Illinois National Guard, and they were running convoys between Iraq and Kuwait and Iraq.
Okay.
Getting shot at, and he had these Illinois National Guardsmen who were driving tractor trailers. Millions of over-the-road miles, combat miles, getting shot at, the same kind of tractor trailers and Mack trucks that you see driving up and down the roads. When they came home, they didn't have a CDL, and all those miles they drove did not count towards their experience when they tried to get a civilian job. So they had to start from square one, and they were shown on paper to be less experienced than someone who just did 2 weeks and got a CDL, and yet they drove and fixed trucks for 18 months in a combat situation.
So it's almost an efficiency program is what it is when you think about it, and a streamlined program to move them forward. So while they're in the service and while they're actively deployed, they're going to use that experience after they get out in order to get some real world opportunities for them, and it moves forward. Like I said before, it's amazing that you have. I hope you have time for Christmas shopping. It's wonderful.
I'd hate to be the person who shows up with just gift cards for everyone.
Oh,
so
I understand.
I'll hit Main Street. I'll hit the downtown. There's lots of good shopping here.
There is a lot of good shopping in Elk Grove. And speaking of Elk Grove itself, I understand that you've had several conversations and meetings with Mayor Craig Johnson.
Yes, Mayor Johnson has been really fantastic. I've reached out to him. We're working on some infrastructure projects where where Elk Grove is applying for federal grants, and I'm going to try to help support that. Also state grants. We also just announced that the National Endowment of the Arts, I'm going to make sure I get this right, just announced a $10,000 grant to the Anelia Sinha Foundation in Elk Grove, which promotes arts and culture of India. So that's coming in. And as people are applying for federal grants and the like, whether it's government, such as the mayor leading the program, or a not-for-profit, or a community group, or a church, or contact my office. We're happy to help you apply for those grants and write letters of recommendation, and let's get some more money, federal dollars coming back in here. You pay your taxes, you might as well get that money back.
You might as well have the money come
to the
back.
community.
Absolutely, absolutely. So what's ahead a little bit more for 2014? What do we have going on?
Well, 2014, I hope that we will work on a transportation bill.
Yes.
To really reinvest in our transportation infrastructure. We all have, throughout the district, bridges that need to be repaired, rail and road intersections that are dangerous. There is western access to O'Hare. We have to deal with those issues. We have to deal with noise issues for the expansion of O'Hare, and all of those things that involve everyone from the FAA to the DOT, Department of Transportation, and make sure that the dollars come here, but that we get these projects moving, and let's reinvest in our infrastructure.
So it doesn't sound like you're going to be doing very much at all during 2014. Do you have my goodness
It keeps me out of trouble.
I was going to say, I want to take this opportunity to thank you so much for being with us today. It was indeed an honor and a pleasure to meet you. Thank you so much.
Tom.
I wish you all the best for 2014.
Thank you.
You're watching the Illinois Channel, an independent nonprofit corporation formed to provide gavel-to-gavel coverage of Illinois state government and other public affairs events taking place across Illinois.
Next from Chicago, our contributing correspondent Jeff Berkowitz talks with Kristen McQuery, editorial board writer with the Chicago Tribune. We hear her discuss the different members of the editorial board, how the editorials are written and selected, and her insights into the Chicago Tribune's philosophical approach to public policy. This runs about 30 minutes.
You're watching Public Affairs. Berkowitz is my name and politics is our game. And we're going to be doing lots of politics, or discussing lots of politics and public policy this evening, because as I said, we have a guest, Kristen McQuery, a woman, a young lady, I should say, who I've long admired, because before she was on the Chicago Tribune editorial board, she was a political columnist that once was the Daily Southdown, then merged with the Star.
Correct.
And what did you spend, 12 years or so writing political columns?
I did. I spent about half the time as a straight news reporter covering politics and government, and then the second half, about 6 years, writing a column. And editorials, too.
And the columns would be both investigative, reporting, opinion, all mushed together, sort of, or sometimes separate?
They were. I mean, they were...
A lot of more reporting than or were you an opinion journalist?
Toward the end, when that's all I was doing, then yes, I had the freedom to write opinion columns, but mostly I was writing about our lawmakers from the south suburbs and what they were doing, and elections and little scandals, and kind of lifting the curtain a little bit on politics just in that area.
Step back for a second. Give people a flavor of what you covered, the geographic area, because you mentioned before the show when they were talking, a lot of your emphasis was on the south suburbs that were within the reach of those newspapers.
Right.
What were they? Give people an idea.
So the Southtown, when I first started, was pretty much everything south of I-55. So the south side of the city, and everything from Midway Airport out to Will County, and then over to the Indiana line. Orland Park, Tinley Park were kind of our hubs.
So tick off like 20 or 25 suburbs that were within your reach.
Calumet City, Lansing, Glenwood, Harvey, Robbins, Dixmoor, Alsip, Crestwood, and then all the way over to Homer Glen, Frankfort, New Lenox, Plainfield, Bolingbrook.
That about does it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
And you covered a lot of your beat was the state legislature, right?
It was.
Okay. As a part of that, but you have to know that, the suburban races in those areas you mentioned. So, and you were passionate about a number of things in politics. Would that be correct?
You could say that, yes.
What are you most passionate about in terms of public policy?
In terms of public policy, I mean, you mean issues or
Well,
just...
because right now, you're an editorial board writer.
Mm-hmm.
We should step back and tell people there are 11 people on the editorial board, right? I mean, there is Bruce Stold, who's kind of the king. I don't know if no, he is like a major guy, and that's meant to be as a compliment.
Yeah.
Because Bruce is the editorial page editor.
Yes.
Which means there's never a byline, but if somebody goes wrong, if there's a major change, they probably look to Bruce as the collective, even though he knows somebody like you is writing, Chapman is writing, we'll go through all those in a second. So others are actually doing the writing, but Bruce is kind of involved in everything that goes on that editorial page, right?
It's his
Every
page.
editorial, right? It's his page.
It's his page, yeah.
And sometimes, well, tell me, so you folks meet every Monday and Thursday, right?
We do. We meet for an hour twice a week. We bring ideas. We pitch ideas basically to the board. You come prepared with 2 or 3 ideas that you think we should editorialize about for that week. And, we toss the story around, we debate. Sometimes, I'm trying to think, we talked about something today, there wasn't enough consensus to even write about it. So some things just kind of die at the table, and then other things turn into editorials for the rest of the week.
You say there wasn't enough consensus to write about it?
Right.
I mean, so there's all of you, or some of you, well, we should say there are 11 people on the board. It starts with Bruce as the editorial page editor, right?
Right.
And then we've got the writers,
right,
which include John McCormick. He's the deputy editorial page editor.
Correct.
Right? And sort of, John strikes me as economic conservative. Does that sound right?
Yeah, I mean the pages.
The page is economic conservative.
Yeah.
The page is, you can see the principles when you go to the website for the Chicago Tribune. It'll tell you something about the editorial page, the principles of the Chicago Tribune. Come back to that. But the page, in a sense, is free market, is limited government, low spending, low taxes. That's your general inclination of the page of the Chicago Tribune. Going back to?
Oh.
Who's the guy? Who was the colonel? What?
Colonel McCormick,
Right.
yes. I mean,
and he was a pretty much a straight conservative, everything conservative, right?
Yes. And the page, has been very conservative throughout its history. We've gotten a little more socially moderate, I would say, over the last 10 years. Long before I got there, they came out and opposed the death penalty, and that was a big change for the page. We came out in favor of same-sex marriage. That was a change for the page and for the paper.
But these are sort of semi-social issues. I mean, the
right.
capital punishment and death penalty, I don't know, that's more social than economic. But the one thing that hasn't changed, I think, is clear to say, tell me if I'm wrong, the economic conservatism of the Chicago Tribune.
That's
Would that
true.
be right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So it still very much believes limited government, right?
Yes.
Maximize individual liberty, right?
Right.
Free markets, right?
Free markets.
No change in that.
Not really. I mean, there's nuance depending on what the subject of the day is, but no, generally we have favored, entitlement reform, decreasing defense spending, getting rid of farm subsidies. I mean, anything that kind of looks like big government, we have not been in favor.
You also, one of the principles, maybe the major principle other than free markets, I mean, I would say a major principle, perhaps the major principle on your domestic issues would be free markets. Did I get that right?
Yes.
Why are you laughing? I mean, I think I'm getting that right.
Because you said it about 3 times, so what are you leading up to?
Well, no, because in addition, in addition to that as a major principle, I want to come back to that. But so that's a major principle, and individual freedom is a major principle. And when I say John McCormick, well, the other major principle, okay, what would you say? Free markets, individual freedom, individual responsibility. Think of what does a paper do? What does a newspaper often do? Not just the Tribune. And then you'll think of what's the other major principle for the Chicago Tribune. It's right there in your principles. You should read your website. Isn't it to be a major league watchdog?
Sure.
Overseeing government. I mean, if you see a corporate entity, in a sense, those they are overseen by their shareholders, private shareholders. But the government, the shareholders for a government are, in a sense, every citizen, but they're too diffuse. In Illinois, we have 13 million citizens. They got things to do, so forth. We only have a few major newspapers left, of which one is the Chicago Tribune, right?
Yeah, we do a lot of accountability editorials and trying to hold people accountable, and we just sent out questionnaires for lawmakers who are running for re-election. I will be looking at their questionnaires from last time around and seeing if they did in fact vote the way they said they were going to vote, pass bills that they said they were going to pass. I watch roll calls pretty closely so that when they do come for an endorsement meeting, we are aware of whether or not they kept their word. That's a big role of the Tribune.
Okay, so that's what I mean by a watchdog. And the people who run for office are going to keep their promise. I once had when I was a grad student, I once had a mentor advisor named George Stigler, who was a big guy at the University of Chicago, deceased now, and he would joke and say, I met a lot of students of promise and a few who actually kept it. You might say the same thing about candidates. You probably meet a lot of candidates who promise a lot and a few who will actually keep their promises, right?
Yes.
Probably too few. But so seriously, that's a major role. Free markets is part of your philosophy and what you believe in, but the role is one of doing the investigation. It's one thing to say you're a watchdog, it's another to devote the resources to say go out and look. Like you had a recent story on Mike Madigan, right?
Yes.
News story.
News story, and then a follow-up editorial.
And what was the news story? As I say, we're taping this, may see it at different times, but we're taping it on January 9th, 2014. News story is about a week ago, 10 days ago?
Sunday.
Sunday. And what was it?
This story was, to me, the first time. It was an excellent piece, and I think it really laid out why Speaker Michael Madigan is so powerful. It's almost part of his surname. You see every time he's in the paper, the powerful Speaker Mike Madigan. And so reporters went through and connected about 400 people who have political connections to Michael Madigan, and we're able to trace whether or not he got them raises, whether he got contracts for them, whether he picked up the phone and made recommendations, and those recommendations were followed. So it just gave you an inside look of how deep and wide his net is, and why people are so loyal to him, why he has all this power. Because he gets jobs for people, and he gets jobs for people's kids, and then he gets raises for them once they have a job. So
and what do we call that? What's the general one word for that?
It's patronage.
It's patronage. It's the Chicago way, isn't it? And I guess with Mike, it's the Speaker Mike, it's the Illinois way. But we used to joke about the Chicago way. Some people thought when you pass a trash can, it would say the Chicago way, is you put garbage in the trash can. No, no, no. The Chicago way, the Mayor Daley way, where you're talking the old Richard J. Daley, the younger son, Richard M. Daley, you're talking Rahm Emanuel, even the folks in between Daley and Lee, Sawyer and Volandic and all those guys, and ladies, Jane Byrne. See, this is a cross-gender thing. It doesn't know any bounds by gender.
It's cross-party, too.
Cross-party.
Yeah.
It is the way of politics. Why are people, in a sense, I'm saying, why don't you just give up and go home? Because, you know, if you're, Milton Friedman, you know, the great economist from the University of Chicago, now deceased, his way of saying it was just minimize government, because you're going to have waste. But if you make government only 10% of your GDP, the waste is much less than if, like right now, it's 40 or 50% total, right? Federal, state, county, local government, 50% of our GDP goes to funding government, pretty much, right?
It does. And then about 20% of our state budget goes to funding the retirements of state government, the retired workers.
Okay. And I mean, so why don't you just give up? Because it's now 50%. You're going to have all that waste. You can rail about Mike Madigan all you want. Do you really think you can change it?
I think we can make people more aware. I mean, we haven't talked about pensions. We don't have to go there. But I mean, the Chicago Tribune editorial page wrote about pensions for about 6 or 7 years consistently. And finally, the public sort of woke up to the problem, and you had a bill that actually passed out of the legislature. Because, well, there are a few reasons. One, the leaders finally got on board. You had Madigan presenting a bill. And I think the public started to become aware of how much of the budget is dedicated to pensions, and it's unsustainable. Something had to change. We have all these unpaid bills. We have the worst credit rating in the country. We had the highest unemployment rate in the country until a couple of months ago. So I think all of this coverage did eventually lead to change.
Now, you're, and I'm not buttering up the guest here, you're smart, you're aware. You know people like John Tillman at the Illinois Policy Institute, right?
I do. Mm-hmm.
You respect John, right?
Sure, yes.
He says, and his organization says, as do some others, probably the Heartland Institute would probably agree with Joe Bast, heading that organization. Look, this is just a Band-Aid, this legislation. It doesn't adopt a defined contribution system. It still stays with a defined benefit system. Tillman says they're going to be back in 2 or 3 years and they're going to have the same old problems. Why didn't you go the whole thing? I mean, look, just between us girls, really? Don't you think it would be better to have a defined contribution system? You agree with John, right?
We have said that we even when we endorsed this bill and said vote yes on this bill, we said, lawmakers, you'll be back. Eventually, government is going to have to get out of the business of defined contribution plans or defined benefit plans.
Right. Go to a defined contribution plan.
And yes,
Tillman's
some
right.
mix of
just
it.
say it. John will like me so much. Can you just say John Tillman's right?
No, I'm not going to say that.
Really?
No,
okay.
I'm not going to say
At
that.
least his philosophy is right.
I think his philosophy that government cannot sustain these types of programs is correct.
And the Illinois needs a defined contribution system, right?
Eventually, yes.
Okay.
But this bill barely passed. And this is what I've pointed out to people who disagreed with our position on it. If this bill went down, it was status quo, we would have had another credit rating downgrade, and we probably wouldn't have pension reform for another 2 or 3 years. There was a bill in the General Assembly that his institution supported.
And sponsored by?
Jeannie Ives and Tom Morrison in the House. 2 sponsors. That's it.
It had Oberweis in the Senate, but he left, right?
I don't know if he signed off. He eventually
yeah.
voted yes on the bill that came before them.
So he did not go with Ives and Morrison.
My point is,
because he's running for the U.S. Senate, and we like Jim, but here is a case of expediency over principle. He wants to be a little more mainstream. He'd like you folks to endorse him in the Republican primary. He'd like to have a shot of winning the general election. So do you see my point? he's kind of, and it's your point, he might be critical of you. You have these principles. You have the free market stuff and all that stuff, and you kind of played politics a little bit. Said yours could pass, theirs couldn't. I'm not being necessarily critical. I'm just trying to highlight an important issue that I'm sure you face in your editorial board meetings. Sometimes you look at something, and as you're saying now, it's better, we could pass it, we could stick to our principles, but we have people who are kidding. So you went with the political expediency over what you know in your heart is right.
No. We went with the best decision for the state and taxpayers. That's what we went with. And we have said, vote yes on this bill and then keep working toward a solution. Don't crush the only bill that has gotten to the House floor and the Senate and has any chance of passing and will save money. We can argue over how much it's going to save, but it will save money. The rating agencies are already looking favorably on it.
Are they? Has the rating of Illinois gone up since the passage of this list? Their credit rating? It hasn't, has it?
I don't think, actually one of the agencies put us up a notch. But actually, it's going to take about 2 or 3 years to get back to where we were.
Before they'll even raise your credit rating? If it's as significant as you say, wouldn't you expect? Because some people sat in your chair and they said, I don't remember who, may think of it later, and said, you know, we'll know if this is working, not when the Chicago Tribune says it, not when the politicians say it, not when the academics say it, when the rating agency says, oh, looking at that legislation, we're now going to upgrade the credit of the state of Illinois, and that hasn't happened yet.
I believe one of the rating agencies did.
A minor nudge or something, but not dramatic.
We have to go into the bond market again before we will actually get to see
and you think,
what that happens.
Oh, when we go into the bond market, you'll see if they now give a higher rating on the bonds issued by the state of Illinois.
Yes.
Because you believe, as we said, free markets. So you believe, as well as me, as well as Bruce Stoll, pretty much as well as everybody in the Chicago Tribune editorial board, would that be going too far? Believe in free markets, right?
The board, the page, believes in free markets. Yeah, we're a diverse board, though.
And we'll come back to this, but you're a big believer in school choice, right?
I am.
School vouchers, charter schools, so forth. You're also one of the main people on that board to write about state, city, and county issues, government issues. That's your beat, so to speak. You share that with other people, not exclusively. Okay, so we mentioned McCormick, who's key economic conservative. Go along with that, right?
I'm not going to characterize
come on up.
the politics of individual members.
Craig Burns, he's a business issue guy. That would be fair.
Yeah.
His background's in business. He's more of a moderate. We've seen him on Chicago Week in Review. He's a moderate guy, right?
You can talk to him and make
You're
that determination.
You're not going to say that? You don't have an opinion?
I'm not going to characterize the board members. I can tell you who they are and what beats they cover.
Well, are you a moderate? Are you a conservative? Are you social conservative, economic? You can talk about yourself. What about you?
I'm all over the place. I don't know what I am. I'm really fiscally conservative.
Fiscally, okay.
Yeah.
But as to the social issues, you're sort of all over the place. You wouldn't say you're social conservative. You wouldn't say you're a social liberal.
Correct.
You're somewhere in between.
Yes.
Okay. So covered you, Burns, McCormick. You three are writers. There are people on the editorial board who are on there but not writers, but you three are writers, right?
Correct.
And there are 3 other writers, right?
Yes.
6. Steve Chapman, he's a libertarian columnist.
He's a columnist and he writes editorials as well.
But he's also a civil liberties guy. He's a gun owner rights guy, right?
Yes.
Would it be, I mean, you've seen this. It wouldn't be odd. It wouldn't be going too far on the branch for you to say he is a libertarian, right?
No, he is a libertarian.
He would say he's a libertarian himself, okay. So, and then we got Paul Weingarten, right?
Paul Weingarten, he does a lot of our healthcare and education issues and foreign policy.
And foreign policy, Middle East, okay. He developed a specialty, I believe. He's been there about a dozen years or so.
Right.
Okay. And Marie Dillon, she's a writer?
She's a writer.
She focuses on?
She focuses on immigration. She does a lot of our transportation. She does some city hall. She does a lot of our kind of quirky, fun editorials.
Would you say she's a conservative or a liberal?
I'm not going to characterize the
Paul Weingarten, conservative or liberal?
You can talk to them if you want to.
Okay. So, and then we've got, let's round out the rest of the board.
Jody Hofstetter is our editor for the Letters.
Okay.
Letters to Editor, Voices of the
Voice
People.
of the People. Okay.
Marsha Lithcott is the commentary page editor, so people who submit op-eds go through her.
Okay.
And like Eric Zorn joins us for our meetings.
Eric does that. He's not listed on your page.
He's not on the board. He's not on the board.
But he
joins us in meetings just because it's fun. And it gives him ideas.
And does he also get to speak?
Oh, sure.
So he's like ex officio editorial board member.
Exactly. Yes, we love having Eric around. And then Scott Stantis is our editorial cartoonist. He's on the board. And we have a coordinator, Jessica Reynolds. I think that's everybody.
And that's and Clarence Page. He's on the board, isn't he?
He is on the board. He's in D.C.
So he's he doesn't always participate, or
no.
If he does, it would be by speakerphone, or he generally
rarely.
doesn't?
Mm-hmm.
So he's sort of on the board as almost ex officio.
Right.
Okay. I think that, okay, so we pretty much covered it.
Yeah, that's
But I'm glad to hear, Eric, I didn't know, because the man has inordinately good taste, because he's often been a guest on this show.
Has he?
Yeah. He's written a great column years ago about this guy Berkowitz, I don't know. Seriously, the man has excellent taste. No, but seriously, we like Eric. And he's somebody who's mixed, because in terms of his ideology, he probably wants me to say he's a strong liberal, which he is, but he often deviates, I don't know, often, but with some frequency deviates from the liberal line. Mm-hmm. He's pretty big on he's sort of big on gun rights, I think, because I think he's empirical evidence that use of guns, perhaps defensively, is, I think, I'm speaking for Eric and I shouldn't, but I know he surprised some of the liberals that he takes a view that's generally viewed as more conservative.
He has, and as Illinois was, just as we were going through the concealed carry bill process, and as he learned more about it, I think, he was actually, I favored concealed carry, and he I was able to pull him a little bit to my side.
And all kidding aside, everybody knows Eric is, twice a week as a columnist for the Chicago Tribune. He used to be 3 times a week, but now he does a lot of work on the blog.
He does an
excellent blog. So he's given a lot
of
credit for that. He does an excellent blog. I sometimes call him father of blogging. I got started, many people got their start through Eric.
Yes, he was the first person I really started following.
But the other thing is he does this thing in the Cabbage Patch or whatever, a multitude of things where he seeks out different viewpoints on an issue and gets people to write on that issue on both sides.
Right.
So he's a big believer in what I think the Tribune is, getting multiple sides of the issue out, discussed, even though your editorials tend to be pretty, is that word I was using? Free market, right?
Right.
Right. So people watching the show, by the end of the show, if you have to think about anything for the Chicago Tribune editorial board, and you can only think of 2 words, it would be?
I would say less government is probably a better
than free market?
Yeah. I would say that's a consistent principle throughout any subject we're writing on.
Okay, so I stand corrected now. All right, but I think we've given people a pretty good idea of the editorial board. But if we want to give it the dynamics, as we said, Monday to Thursday, you meet every Monday and Thursday, the board does.
We do.
Okay, and you so I was wondering, how do you get something written? How do the things get assigned? I thought it may be like the king, who still walks in and says, okay, Kristen, you do this. John, you do that.
No.
Chapman, how does it work?
People think that there's, outside corporate interest at the Tribune editorial board or something, and it couldn't be further from the truth. We bring our own ideas. I bring my own ideas in and pitch them to the board, and if there's consensus and it feels like a good editorial, write it. And it's the same with everybody else. So the topics that come up could be anything from, we had a long debate about dibs, the whole parking, putting lawn chairs in the street. Right. So we had a long debate about that. We talk about immigration policy. We talk about school choice. We talk about, anything that is in the news that day or that we have ideas about.
So let's get real serious. We only have about 5 minutes left, so we're going to have to do like 5 issues real quick on the editorials. Okay. Recently, you pushed for concealed carry, and you got Bruce Stoll to agree. The Tribune came out essentially for concealed carry. Did I get that right?
We came out and we told
Much
Pat Quinn
favorable.
to sign the bill.
Okay. And that took some work on part of you and others on the board to persuade Bruce that was a good thing, right?
I think the page traditionally has been a little more gun control, and so there was a little discomfort in moving ahead with concealed carry.
But you went ahead. Bruce was persuaded at the end of the day.
I think so.
You guys rolled him, sir. No, I'm just kidding, Bruce. No, I'm just kidding. All right, Obama. You folks endorsed Obama in 2008, right?
We did.
That's like, what principles? We've gone over the principles. Market principles, limited government, less spending, less regulation, less taxes. Do you associate any of that with Barack Obama?
In 2008, I wasn't on the board.
I think go ahead and defend him, bitch. You're a hired lackey. No, I'm just kidding.
There were a lot of newspaper editorial boards who endorsed Obama in 2008. He had a lot of promise. I think he put himself out there as not being as liberal as he has become. And so, yes, we endorsed him in 2008, and then we endorsed him again in 2012.
And you endorsed him in 2008. Did you vote for him? In 2008, did you vote for Barack?
I did vote for Barack Obama in 2008.
Then you unendorsed him in 2012?
Well, the endorsement process for president is a little different.
No, I don't mean you. Oh. I'm saying personally you voted. Did you vote for him?
I did not vote for President Obama in 2012.
But you did in 2008?
Yeah.
Okay. So something happened to give you pause. What was that?
I just don't like the direction that the country is heading in terms of our deficit and our debt. And I felt that a Republican candidate would do a better job getting a handle on it. Medicare reform, Social Security reform, that's what this country needs.
And he's not doing enough. And so you said you're going with Romney.
I did.
Okay. The thing you're really most passionate about, school choice?
It's among them, yeah.
And
that dates back to my time at the Southtown, because I wrote for years about the need to change the funding formula because we're so reliant on property taxes, and it's so unfair. And I just got so impatient with the General Assembly never doing anything about that, never caring about this huge gap. So in what wealthy schools have and what lower-income schools have.
Why do you like school vouchers and school choice?
Because I'm tired of waiting. I'm tired of waiting for them to fix the problem.
So you think school vouchers, school choice, without any change in distribution, might give low-income kids or kids of low-income parents more choice, better quality?
That's it. Just a choice.
That's just choice.
Yeah. They can decide. They're not stuck at their neighborhood school.
Okay. Minimum wages is a lot in the news lately. It's kind of curious. Is the Chicago Tribune in favor of minimum wages?
We have generally been in favor of minimum wage, but we have not been in favor of raising the minimum wage. And I think we were uncomfortable when Illinois got out of step with the national minimum wage.
Yeah, but don't you know, I mean, you know a little economics, right? Demand
not
and
as
supply.
Much as you, Jeff.
Now, demand and supply intersect as a free market. If you raise the wage, if you have a minimum wage, it's above the market wage. Demand goes down, supply goes up, you create unemployment. Why? Bruce Rauner got this right recently. He's running for governor, and he said he would be in favor of lowering the minimum wage. That's actually, I think it would be nice if you could persuade the board. If they believe in free markets, they should say, Bruce got it right. There'd be less unemployment with a lower minimum wage. Bruce was turned around by his guys, his handlers. Bruce, come on the show, I'm on your side. Because they knew it would be difficult to explain or difficult to persuade. But I think Bruce Dole knows this. Abolishing the minimum wage would immediately create more employment, give people more jobs. If they had low income because their wages would lower, supplement that income. That's what Milton Friedman would do, but don't take their job away. Just give and don't take away some of the benefits they get more income, like food stamps, etc., but don't take so much of away. Always give people an incentive to work, to be self-sustaining. If it's a low income, that's the problem, not that it's a low-paying job. Do you understand?
I do. I don't think that differs much from our position, and Kirk Dillard actually came out after that.
You're watching the Illinois Channel, an independent nonprofit corporation formed to provide gavel-to-gavel coverage of Illinois state government and other public affairs events taking place across Illinois.
Next from Chicago, in the Illinois Association of School Boards annual conference, we hear a panel discussion on how some of the new mobile technology is changing the way classrooms operate and how classes are taught. This runs about 1 hour.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jim Calabrese, and I'm the principal at Freedom Middle School in Berwyn, Illinois. I'm also the district's Human Resources Director. Next to me is Ms. Mary Havis. She is the principal at Irving Elementary School, and she's also our district's Assessment Director. To my right is Ms. Jenny Lahotsky. She's a 7th and 8th grade science teacher in my building. And then finally, Ms. Amanda Zanchelli, who is a 1st grade teacher at Irving Elementary Building. Today we're going to talk with you about our journey through implementing one-to-one technology into our district. So our district's vision, when Dr. Fields entered our district in 2008, he quickly noticed 2 things. Number one, our district was like many districts around the state where we had a district vision and mission statement that had all of the educational buzzwords in it, but you didn't know what it meant. Those, we're going to lead our students to teach them in 21st century learning, to be community members and lifelong learners, and what does that mean and how do you measure that? So very quickly, while he was doing his induction into our district, he was working with our community to identify groups that could help us. And really quickly, he identified several community constituencies that he wanted to pull together, and we created a District Advisory Committee for Educational Excellence, or DAISY. And the DAISY group had a couple of charges. Their first one was to come up with a goal that our district could measure. So over the fall of 2008 and early 2009, they did some research and they made a recommendation to our school board that you see up there, that South Berlin School District will rank in the top 25% of districts in the state of Illinois as evidenced by state testing. The board approved it and we were on our way. The second thing that DC did was they wanted to spend some time researching what top 25% districts did. What were the best practices that they were implementing, and what could we take from them and bring back to our district? So DC was broken into six subcommittees, and I'm going to forget some of them, so I may have some help from an audience member. But our six subcommittees were professional development, technology, early childhood, gifted and accelerated, community engagement, and literacy. Thank you. We do have some board members in the audience, and as we get to the question and answer session, they may jump in with us. So that group spent the rest of 2009 researching, like I said, and they came back in late 2009 and had several recommendations to our school board about action items that we can take and implement. Things like full-day kindergarten came out of that group. Things like our parent university, where we're engaging parents by offering university-type classes for them to learn about everything that you can imagine. Things from how to help your students be better readers in school, how to family fitness nights. We bring in local banks and lawyers and just try and really help our parents learn as much as they possibly can. That all came out of that DC group. I'd like to show this video.
Hi, I am Samantha Schumann. I'm the principal of Piper Elementary School. I've noticed that the Apple devices and the iOS software have completely redefined the way that we look at learning in our schools. It's no longer defined by recalling information and rote memorization. It's all about innovating activities and engaging activities that require creativity and students actually applying and synthesizing the information. Our students are able to explain what they're learning using iMovie or Photo Booth. They even are able to make choices in how they present their information. They have the possibilities and opportunities to use Keynote to explain their learning, or if they feel more comfortable using numbers to make a graph to demonstrate their learning, they're able to do that, and they're much more engaged in the complete learning process. And the possibilities have just become endless for us.
Hi, my name is Dana Spelzetti, and I'm the special ed DLP teacher here at Kaminsky. The students I work with are students with moderate to severe disabilities. iPads have helped our students in the most remarkable way. Without the iPads, our students typically struggle with your regular typical math and reading tasks. With iPads, the students, their engagement has increased, their interests are at a high level, and they're very motivated. So it makes it easier to complete tasks in reading and math and different areas that may be a struggle.
I'm Megan Babolka from Freedom Middle School, 7th and 8th grade math teacher, and because of Apple and their products, specifically Pages and Numbers, I have been able to build self-paced flipped classroom units so that my students can follow math instruction at their own pace, and I'm able to deliver individualized attention one-on-one for my students throughout the units.
That video was filmed at the beginning of this school year, and that's where we're at right now, but we didn't get there overnight. So we had what we'll call a long, extensive one-to-one journey, and it came out of that DACY group that you heard me talking about. The technology subcommittee in that DACY group was charged with doing an audit of our school district's technology, and what they found out really quickly was that, I believe the technology word is, all of our systems were superannuated. If our superintendent was up here, he would say they were junk. The vast majority of our workstations were more than 10 years old at the time, and certainly not up to 2009 standards. So we knew we needed to begin a revolution in our district, and how we did that, it started with smart board technologies. Our district has a education foundation, and we enlisted their help, and we put smart boards in, I think it was 19 classrooms. Now, administrators were very deliberate with how we put the smart boards in classrooms. We picked people in our buildings that were trailblazers, people that we really thought would be able to take this technology and implement it into their classrooms nearly immediately. But we also spoke with them about the need of, as they're being trailblazers, they need to be available for staff members, provide professional development, after school opportunities for staff members to learn and to see what they were doing, have their classrooms open during the school day. And the 19 people that we picked really lived up to the expectation. But what we really wanted to have happen, we wanted all the other 300 staff members to be upset that they weren't picked to have the smart technologies in their room. And we did that. So as we were going to go around for the next round, principals were fielding requests. Why didn't you pick me? I need this in my classroom. Jenny was really upset with me. You know, she's one of the best teachers in our building, and she wasn't picked, and she took that personally. So as we started having more funds to roll those out, we were able to roll them out in more classrooms. And that's going to be important when we begin talking about the one-to-one mobile device rollout. So pretty quickly, we had these smart boards in every one of our classrooms. And one day, Dr. Fields was having a discussion with Shannon, who's not here, and she was completing a master's program, and she was talking to him about, you know, if I had 6 or 7 computers in my classroom, I could probably do a one-to-one pilot. And Stan asked Shannon, well, what if you had all of them? She's like, well, if I had everybody, it'd be even better, but I'm sure I can get by with about 6 or 7. See, that's an important part, because before these discussions, before DAISY, our teachers were really used to, well, if I could only have this, if I could only get one of these. And what our school board has really challenged us to do is not only think about what we can get by with, but really come to us and challenge us to say, what do you need to be the very best teachers? So Stan took that direction from the school board, talked with Shannon about it, and that's where our one-to-one program was born. By the end of that year, Shannon was piloting a one-to-one classroom in her 4th grade classroom at Piper Elementary School. We had the 7th grade teams at Heritage Middle School, about 100 students piloting one-to-one, as well as 4th graders at Kamensky. And just like with the smart board rollout, we were very deliberate. We chose people who we felt could really run with it. We chose people who we knew we wanted them to be leaders. But we also didn't want to just give it to everybody, because we felt if we just gave it to everybody, we wouldn't be building capacity. So schools being as competitive as we are, the principal at Freedom Middle School was really angry that Freedom wasn't chosen for the pilot. So naturally, I was talking with all of our very best staff members, whispering in their ear, hey, what do you think about this? Is this something you think you can do? Because I want to have a presentation ready for Dr. Fields so we can have this in our building. So after that initial rollout, it was pretty successful. We were able to manage students having the technology in their hands during the school day as well as going home. Our initial performance indicators in the buildings seemed to be positive. We talked about, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, but attendance seemed to be increasing, discipline seemed to be going down, academics seemed to be improving as well. So the next year, I think we got up to 40% of the district who were going to take part in the second step of the pilot. And again, we wanted to be deliberate with that. We wanted to choose people who we knew could implement it in their classroom, people who were going through the professional developments that were provided by the initial one-to-one group. And we did that. And when we rolled it out and had 40% of our district, we learned a few things. We learned that our infrastructure wasn't anywhere near what it should be. We learned that some teachers really needed more professional development. So it was a really good time for us. We were able to build this capacity with our best staff members. They were able to provide professional development to other staff members. We were able to do site visits where site visits, meaning in-school site visits. I sent a team over to Heritage. They sent people over by us, and we were able to kind of build this organic learning model. Oh, we'll get there. Here's just a couple of pictures of what started happening. We sent a group out to California to learn from Apple because we identified Apple as the organization we wanted to work with. We looked at several different platforms, and we just felt that at least initially Apple devices were better for us. So we started this grassroots movement, if you will, this wildfire that was catching on, building capacity with our staff members, and then we rolled it out to the rest of the district. How we rolled it out, in my opinion, was the very best thing we did. We gave all of our non-technology teachers 2.5 years or a year and a half to get ready. This is coming. They were able to work next to people who were being successful. They were able to observe people being successful, and then we were providing professional development opportunities every chance we got. During the school day, after school, in the summers. So by the time it was rolled out, people were very comfortable and knew it was happening. One of the discussions that Daisy talked about was the need for professional development. School districts like ours, like every school district, 80% of the money we spend is on salaries. And if you think of how little money we spend on professional development, how little time is built into our calendar for professional development days, that's not acceptable. We're gonna really make inroads if we can provide great professional development to the 80% of our budget. So that's how we attacked it. Raul talked about the 320 Institute Day because we've really tried to get to a spot where we have teachers teaching teachers. So you already heard me talk about the initial pilot and how that grew. Once we had that initial pilot and we identified educators in our school systems who had the capacity to provide professional development, we brought them all together for the rollout. And the 8/12 is August 12th. That was our opening Institute Day of our first year being one-to-one. And we had a dynamic Institute Day. We did a lot of motivating things. We had, imagine the beginning of a Chicago Bulls game, right? All the pomp and circumstance. And we really rolled it out to, hey, we are here. This is what we're doing. So we provided at that Institute Day several sessions throughout the day that were all teachers teaching teachers and getting ready for the upcoming school day, or excuse me, school year. The Apple PD that we talked about and the Fab 40 that's listed next, through our initial pilot, we identified 40 staff members that we really thought were doing an outstanding job. This was a group who went through every struggle, who were implementing the technology into the classroom, and their classrooms weren't technology classrooms. They were science classrooms, social studies classrooms that were using technology as tools to enhance their students' learning. So we wanted to really invest in them. So we provided some professional development when Apple came to our school district. Those teachers had release time, and they became known as the Fab 40. You can see the T-shirts that our whole district got, but the Fab 40, they had some special T-shirts. And again, what we were looking for with them is organic professional development opportunities. Each building was going to have anywhere from 5 to 8 of these Fab 40 members where if a teacher needed something, they can go right next door, right down the hall. They didn't have to wait to the next after-school professional development session. They didn't have to wait till the next Institute Day. We had these people on our staff, and teachers learn better from teachers. They don't always want the principal up there saying, you need to do it like this, because remember, I forgot what it's like to be in a classroom, a lot of them think, and in some ways, they're probably right. It's different. So if they can go to a safe person in the building, it's going to be much more organic. At the same time, we were identifying some people who we were going to term as I coaches. Those are instructional coaches who we pulled out of the classrooms, and we had 5 of them in the district, and we kind of we kind of are pulling them in different directions. One of them now is the assistant principal in my building. One of them got poached by an outside organization. But these people were here just to, again, provide professional development opportunities during the day. So I have an I coach in my building working with one of our teachers for a month. She's spent 2 or 3 days in the classroom, or 2 or 3 periods in the classroom trying to integrate technology. So again, teachers teaching teachers in a way that it's not just go to a professional development, write everything down, and then come back. So they're co-teaching together. My teacher is watching the iCoach teach, and then she's teaching the next class. So it's a really organic way of providing professional development. And then finally, we developed an iSWAT club. What we learned, the best sources of problem solvers for us are our students. Teachers would be up in front of the classroom and having some sort of issue with a smartboard, with the computer, and a student would be, hey, I can do that. Just do this, 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 and this. And the teacher would be standing there with their mouth open thinking, thank God I had you there. So we developed a club called iSWAT, and it's I am a student willing and able to help. So what we do, each school in the district looks a little bit different, but we provide professional development to these iSWAT clubs, and they're really there to help support our teachers. The iSWAT club at my school, they developed a Google Doc where they man the Google Doc. They let teachers know, hey, this is the iSWAT student who can help you with Pages and Keynote. Here's the iSWAT person who can help you with smartboards. Here's the iSWAT student who can help you with GarageBand and iMovie. And it's amazing because those kids walk into some teacher's classroom and say, hey, do you need anything from me? I have a couple of extra minutes. Are you good? And again, it's students helping teachers, which certainly helps with that organic professional development that we're trying to have in our district. And then just think about how that makes students feel. They know they're a part of what we're doing. They're not coming into a classroom just saying, we're going to do something to them, right? We're going to just teach you everything. They know that they have a part in it. So it's been pretty successful for us. Mary's going to talk a little bit about our data. There you go, Kim.
Good afternoon. As Jim talked about, we really make all of our decisions based on our top 25% vision. So we want to make sure we're continually looking at data to see if this is being successful. We always tell our teachers that if technology supports your learning objective and it's helping kids to be engaged in what they're doing, then we use it. If there's a lesson that doesn't need technology, it's not going to be used. It's a tool for learning. It's something that we want our kids to use to be engaged, but it also needs to be working. So we need to constantly be monitoring our data. We have seen some success since the start of this program in 2009. Our goal was top 25%, with again, 1 being the highest. In 2009, we were at 68. In 2012, we climbed up to 53%. 4 of our 8 schools moved into the top 40% in 2012. We are able to use the technology to really help target some of our subgroups, specifically our English language learners. To give you a little bit of information, our district is about 74% low income, 25% ELL, and 78% Hispanic. So, like many districts, we have some challenges when it comes to testing, when it comes to students making significant growth. So we did start to see some growth in those subgroups that we were targeting. We really brought the focus of data to the forefront. Our teachers are presenting their own individual classroom data to other teachers within their building. If we're not looking at it, we're not using it. So we're continuing to have teachers look at the data and set goals with kids. If this is where you were on your benchmark assessment, what are we going to do the next time? And that's a process that we've continued with throughout the years. We also bring this into our school improvement planning. Each school has teams, just like all of the school districts, that include parents, that include teachers, and we make sure that any decision we make regarding what we need to improve in our schools is based on that top 25 vision. and we continually review practices. It's never good enough. We're constantly looking for what can we do better. We currently have all of our schools, our students 1 through 8, have laptops that they take home and they can use after school as well. Our kindergartners and some first grade classrooms are using iPads. That's the structure we used when we started this program. But now we do have the iPad has really come a long way with some of the programs that we've been using, so we are now having some classrooms piloting iPads at the upper grade levels. We need to keep looking to make sure that what we're doing for our kids is the absolute best we can be doing. So we're constantly reviewing the practices that we have in our district. So some of the growth that we've seen specifically by subgroup, starting in 2009 up through 2012, in all of our areas here. You can see that we saw significant growth in each area. Again, this was on our old ISAT. And some of our areas, like our LEP students and our IEP students, they made some significant growth in that 4-year period. And we continue to monitor that growth. We also began to, some of our schools started to earn some awards for the improvement that we noted, and definitely in closing the achievement gap between our subgroups. It became apparent that we were closing the gap between our different subgroups within the district. So you can see on that graph the comparison of the achievement gap, for example, in low-income students in reading in the state of Illinois was 21 points. In District 100, we had narrowed that down to 9-point difference. With our Hispanic students, we were making some gains to where we were above the state in that achievement gap. Same with our LEP students in both reading and math. Irving Elementary School received the National Title I Distinguished School Award, which was one of 2 schools in the state, and that was for looking at this data of closing the achievement gap. So we've definitely made some gains that we're proud of, but we also know that we have a ways to go in continuing on that path. This is probably a graph that most of you have looked at with our new data. So the first bar there is what our data looked like in 2012. And the second bar is what happened to the data when the new cut scores were applied to that data. And the third bar there is our current ISAT data. On the left is reading, on the right is math. So we have a new set of standards that we need to work toward. And we're confident that we are going to be able to use technology as a tool to continue to engage our students. And now we've shifted our professional development to, we're really confident and we're really, we know how to use technology to support learning in the classroom. What we need to work on now is how do we use that tool to support Common Core learning and getting kids toward the Common Core standards. So that's kind of our starting point. So we know we have a ways to go in that. But we're pleased with where we've come in this 5-year period, and we know that now we have a new baseline, and now we're going to begin our movement toward our top 25% with a new set of standards in mind. Oh, yes, sorry. The other piece that we began to see with assessment is it really, as we followed this data, and we've continued to follow this data, it has completely changed our classroom structures. You won't walk into any classrooms in our district and see a teacher standing in front of the classroom. They've definitely become the facilitator of instruction. It is all small group learning. It is teachers being able to work with small groups because they can use the technology to differentiate. That has been the key component of bringing technology into the classroom, is every child in the classroom can be reading a different book that the teacher has assigned to them. Every child in the classroom can be doing a different assignment on their computer that the teacher has assigned to them. So they can make sure that every child is working at their level. They can get immediate feedback when they're working, and the teacher can continuously modify and monitor the progress that kids are making, even if they're not sitting right next to them. The other thing that we've noticed is the difference in the amount of effort kids are putting into assignments when they know there's an audience looking at them. We all have TVs in our hallway where we now post students' assignments. So when kids do a PowerPoint presentation or a keynote, we put it up there because now all their peers can see it. When kids know that someone else is seeing their work, our middle schoolers, they post them on YouTube at times. When they know the audience is going to see what they've done, they put a lot more time and effort into their work. It has also really helped with our parent communication. Kids are having tools at home and beyond the school day that they wouldn't normally have. And that's brought our parents into the communication piece as well. We have an eChalk program where parents get on and they can see what's going on in the schools, but they can see what's going on in every single classroom. They can jump on Ms. Nan Kelly's page and click on what was the homework last night? What was the video you were supposed to watch today? So it's really increased the parent communication and, of course, the student engagement. And our focus, again, as I said before, is continuing to focus that engagement with the Common Core standards.
Mary talked a little bit about this, but we really wanted to make sure we paid this point, made it as significant as it was for our district, because we have placed a greater importance on data, and not just making data look how we can all make it look. One of the great things that I think our district has done is we've really embraced our great data as well as our not so great data. As you can see by the new cut scores, we debated on putting that in this program just because we can't compare it to last year. It changed. But at the end of the day, we're going to keep putting all of that out there so people can see it. And here's how we've done that. All the way back in 2000 and probably spring 2009, we started making quarterly performance reports to our Board of Education. It was much more than just ISAT scores. It was everything that we did to gather data in our building. So we were reporting on tardies and attendance. We were reporting on behavior referrals and suspensions. We were also reporting on all of our formative assessments that we use, Discovery Education, Ames Web, all of those assessments that we can see how we were performing. And we started that as administrators talking to the board about it. The great part about that was that the board was intimately aware of how each school was progressing, and they were also intimately aware with how we were measuring what we were doing. And very quickly, I think principals realized if the principals were the only ones talking about their school data out in public, it wasn't going to work so well. So very quickly, we started having our staff members give staff performance data meetings, if you will. And this isn't just where who's Johnny and how's he doing? This was quarterly performance reports on all of those things. How's your team attendance looking? How's your team discipline looking? What are your formative assessments saying? And then more importantly, what are you going to do about it? What's your next action step? And then finally, how can administration support you? What do you need to make this happen? And then our staff really held us accountable. There have been many times when Jen's walked into my office and said, Jim, we need this and you haven't gotten it for us yet. What's going on? And believe me, Jen has it pretty quickly after that. It's made it more important. The second thing that we've done is we've brought it to the students. All too often, I believe in education, the adults do all of the talking. And we do all of the presenting, and then again, we're going to do things to students. We're going to just fill their brains up with knowledge. That's so backwards. They are our clients. It's their education. We need to involve them in this. So most buildings started doing things to make the data public with their students. Quarterly performance assemblies, where you broke it down. At the middle school, I broke it down by team. How is your team doing with attendance, tardies, and absences? How was your team doing with discipline referrals and suspensions? How was your team doing on your most recent formative assessments? Now, those are the three big things for us because we really feel if kids are in school, they're going to have a really good opportunity to learn. Not to mention, the state pays us by how many kids are in school, right? So it's kind of a double-edged sword there. Certainly if a kid's in school and they're acting inappropriately, so they're being kicked out of class, that takes away from the whole system. So we want to make sure that students are intimately aware of how are they performing behavior-wise. And then finally, the formative assessment. That's the number we use to measure our performance. So as we started talking about that with students, they became more interested. They wanted to know their numbers. What does it look like? And through that competition that we always have, we were able to do that. Last year, I started emailing our students our attendance performance every day. And at first it was just, hey, here's our number of tardies, here's our number of attendance absences, and here's what our goal was. But really quickly I found out it opened up communication between me and my students. I was asking students, let me know, why aren't you in school today? What was going on? Why were you tardy today, to try and make them more accountable. But what I also found out was sometimes students have things going on that we don't know about. I received an email for a student, Mr. Calories, I'm sorry I wasn't in school yesterday, but when the paramedics came to pick up my mom, they thought I should go to the hospital with her. So I nearly fell out of the chair. Naturally, when that student came back the very next day, hey, what's going on? Well, the student's mom suffers from seizures. It's something they deal with, and the mom had a pretty bad seizure that morning, and it was a little out of the ordinary. But for her, we were able to check in. Hey, here's our social workers. Is everything going up? Okay. Hey, Mom, is everything all right? This is what happened. Is there something that we as a school can do for you? I am convinced we would have never known about that. And that's just one example. I can give you a lot more. I know my colleagues can give you more as well. And then finally, one thing that we really did was we really tried to get our data out to the community every chance we got. I am posting our attendance data on our internet, on our website. When I do my weekly phone blasts where I'm talking with parents about what's going on for the previous week and what's happening next week, I give them attendance data. We're putting our data assembly reports on things like YouTube. We're tweeting out daily attendance averages on our Twitter handles, if you will. So we're really trying to make this data so important to everybody, because if everybody knows about it, they know how they're being measured, we know we can show improvement, and it's been really, really good for us. Next, I'm going to introduce Amanda, and this is probably the best part of our presentation, because Amanda and Jen are going to show you what this looks like in classrooms. So Amanda?
The level of engagement is incredible as you walk through the buildings at any of the schools in our district. Students are enjoying the learning, and in a really good lesson, they have no clue exactly all the learning that's going on. Whether students are reinforcing a skill through a game of a lesson that we've already taught, listening and recording stories online, or playing against peers to increase their fact fluency, students are engaged and excited about their learning. One of my first graders, and this is just this week, she came in and she was so excited because she takes her laptop home, and the learning and the excitement doesn't stop at 3 o'clock with our school day. They take their computers home so they get to continue that. She came in and she wanted to share this story that she had practiced and practiced with her classmates. So instead of having to read it in front of the class and get nervous, she was able to practice it on her own time, reading it and just doing an awesome job. So I just want to show you this super quick.
Earth is the one planet in the solar system where people and animals live. Earth and the other planets move around the sun.
Okay, and it goes on, but she was so excited. And as a teacher and an educator, nothing warms my heart more than to see a first grader develop this love for learning and then to not only want to practice her reading at school, but to want to take it home and practice it, not only for me, for herself, and for her peers. We talked a little bit about the differentiation that we see in the classrooms now, and students are able really throughout the entire school day to work on their own ability level. My classroom, just like the majority of classrooms across our country, has students that are above level, students that are below level. We have English language learners, students with special needs, and students who simply learn differently from the child sitting next to them. The technology helps me to meet each of my students' needs. This is just one example of differentiated work on our computers, and we were discussing the different seasons. And one of my students, who is below level in both reading and writing, was able to draw her picture. But after drawing it, she was then able to take the time to record herself talking about the different seasons. Another one of my students was able to get words down, and then my final student was able to put ideas and thoughts about the different seasons into sentences and then eventually paragraphs. Now the neat thing about this with the technology, I would have not known that my student who was only able to draw had all this background knowledge and all these experiences with the seasons just as much as my friend who was able to write full paragraphs. Because she was able to record it and discuss it through her computer, we were able to share that with the class the same as we were able to share the paragraphs. Instant feedback is another really important part of my classroom. As an elementary school teacher, it's critical that when I'm working with small groups of students, that I know that my children are practicing the skills that they're working on in the correct way. And if they're not practicing them in the correct way, I need for them to know the proper way to go about each problem. In this first picture, one of my first graders was practicing greater than, less than, and equal to, and he was actually practicing it incorrectly. Now by scanning the QR code, that's going to now tell him what the correct answer is so that that can redirect his thinking for the following problem. In this next clip, you're going to see one of my first graders using IXL, which is one of the math programs that we have at our school.
Equals 8.
And again, it shows him when something is correct or if he has a hard time with something.
9.
Again, so this instant feedback helps my children to know when they're practicing a skill correctly, while I'm able then to teach new skills and concepts to kids in a small group learning setting. The final picture is of, and it's kind of difficult to see, but one of my first graders was doing a timed math fact test, and he is able to see which problems he got correct, and then as well which problems he missed. Now this helps to put learning into their own hands. He knows which math facts he needs to practice. He knows which skills he needs to practice. In our classroom, it's no longer the teachers only saying, we need to work on this to get you better. We have all this data, and the kids are seeing the data through all these different programs that help them to really direct and guide their learning as well. Just like any other subject area, so I teach first grade. So in reading, we're working on foundational skills, building decoding strategies, comprehension strategies, so that when our first graders move up year to year and they become fifth graders, then they're able to use these skills on novels and stories. In math, we're working on addition and subtraction and really gaining the number sense so that as they get older, they're able to then apply these skills and strategies to multiplication and division and multiple step word problems. The computer's similar. So in first grade, we're working on exposing our children to some of these different programs, bits and pieces of these projects. So as they get older, they can really continue with each year to make the learning their own and demonstrate their knowledge in a lot of different ways. This is just going to be a quick video, which is a little bit difficult to hear, but this is one of our fourth grade classrooms, and they were doing an augmented reality book report. So instead of turning in a paper copy, you'll see this fourth grader appear when they hold the iPad over it. And he was dressed as Salvador Dali. And so no longer are our kids, no longer are our kids just turning in paper copies of book reports, but they're able to truly become these characters, learn so much more, and then also teach their peers about different projects. Okay, and I'm going to turn it over to Jen, who's going to talk more about what it looks like, our technology looks like at the middle school level.
All right.
You can hear him at the end.
Okay, we're doing some wonderful things with this in middle school as well. A lot of teachers in my school and at the middle school level are using what's called flipped classrooms. So they're assigning students videos and different tasks to do at home to introduce a concept. So instead of standing up on the board and showing problems and students taking notes, they can do that with a video at home. You can save that class time. Then they come back to the classroom and they're able to practice what they learned in the classroom with the teacher's guidance. So that way they don't go home and have no clue what the teacher was talking about in class. And you can also then, they have the lecture as their video to watch, so they can stop and go back and see, wait, I didn't understand that, let me see that again. They can pace it themselves. So that way the student is intimidated in class to raise their hand and ask a question, now has that video at their fingertips and they can see everything that goes on within that lesson. So they can come to class prepared, ready to demonstrate that and get the teacher's help when needed. Another thing that this technology provides is communication and accountability. We use a website called eChalk, and that's district-wide. Every teacher has an eChalk page. It also saves time for the teachers to not have to develop their own websites and figure out how you can upload videos and do different things. Everything is accessible through this one website. Parents have access to this, students have access to this. So every day I put my agenda on eChalk, the students come in and they pull up the agenda, any documents that need downloaded, any videos that they need to see, they have access to all of those things. I can stop wasting my time at the copying machine, save resources and my time. It also helps too if there's something that needs edited, like, oh, this didn't go so well with my first science class, then I can change it on eChalk for the next class instead of having to cross something out on the copy and tell them, well, this question should say this, it makes more sense if this is this way. I can automatically reflect on my lessons and fix that for the next classroom when it's uploaded to eChalk. Since the students take their devices home as well, they have access to their homework. If they can't go home and say, oh, I didn't bring my homework home, you can go back to eChalk and you can download it again, or you can use your device. A lot of times they're using their device as their homework regardless, so it's not left in their locker, it's not left at home, it's not left at school when they need it at home. This also is great for students that are absent because they can go on to eChalk, they can see what they missed, and they can get that taken care of. Then if they have questions, they can come in with their questions. Instead of going to class the next day, getting the work, going home, realizing you don't know how to do it, they come back in the next day and have questions about it. It just very streamlines that process for those students that are absent as well. It makes them accountable for their learning. Everything is at their fingertips. They have no excuse. And then when we're communicating, this increases our communication with parents as well. Through this website, the parents can go on and see not only the homework for the day, but the agendas and what was going on in class. So when a parent asks their student, what do you do at school today? And they say, oh, nothing. Well, you can go on the website and you can see, instead of saying, what did you do at school today? Oh, I saw that you were learning about seasons in science. What did you learn about that? So you can really have a more engaging conversation with your child and see that they aren't just doing nothing at school. Through this website also, all the students have an email account. I know that was something when we first started the one-to-one, how do we communicate with our students through these devices? We don't want them all signing up for a Gmail account that is accessible to everything. We have control over this email, so we can open it up so they can email other students, but we have to get parent permission to do that. As of right now, most of the setting is that they can only email teachers. So that is a safe email account for them to use through our eChalk site, and then we can decide the controls that they have on their email account. And we can also email parents through that as well. So it's a great communication. Just something as simple as sending out a schedule for the day, or sending out encouragement for a test. Like, okay, you have your benchmark test today. Good luck. I know you guys are going to do great. Our teachers utilize that a lot to just send those personal messages out to students and to parents as well. The devices enable us to collaborate, not only with the students, but the students with each other. In the graph there, I used Google Docs to complete that graph. The students did a lab in my science class. I teach science, I don't think I said that. In this particular graph, they were collecting data on mass, and then they could put all their data together in a class graph. So not only can you see the trends of all the data, like a real scientist would, you would take multiple tests and collect all that data. Well, they'd only have 45 minutes, so they can only collect one set of data. But now they can see the data for the whole class or the whole team, or however many students I decide to collaborate on that graph, and make decisions based on that. They can also see their errors as well. If they have the graph is going up this way and they see theirs goes like that, they can see, oh, I must have did something wrong there, and they can go back. Was it measurement? Was it an error in typing? Things like that. So it helps them collaborate with each other and correct their own errors. And down at the bottom there, my students are currently working on a project where they're collaborating with each other to demonstrate how the sun, earth, and moon interact with each other. So they can go on their project board, as I call it, and put in their ideas so they have a place where everything is. I know before I had these devices, you'd work with a group project, one student's not there, oh, I can't do anything today, my partner's not here, and they have everything at home. Well, it's all on your computer now. Everything is accessible to both students. They can both be going on the document at the same time, adding in their thoughts, adding in their knowledge, and then using that to create their project. And in the final slide here, we use, it'll play. We use this as a tool for assessment as well. One of the standards that I was trying to assess here to show mastery is the standard states that they need to develop a model to show changes in particle motion when thermal energy is added. So I'm going to show this video and then we can discuss it.
Particles in motion. By Hidayah and Kate. Let's get started, shall we? You're going to see these circles in the video. These circles represent particles. The first type of particle you are going to learn about is the solid particle. Things that have solid particles are pencils, bracelets, and balloons. Got it? Good.
Now, I could have given a paper and pencil test and she would have got 100. But she would have never showed me what she knew about this topic if she didn't have the technology to show that. And I was worried about assessing the standard in my students there. That was my goal, to see, do they understand? Do they meet this standard? But to make it relevant for them, they don't care if they meet the standard. To make it relevant for them, I gave them the task that they need to teach this to an elementary classroom. So we then took these projects, and through our eChalk page, I was able to upload them to eChalk to send them to another classroom, and those classrooms could download those assignments to show it was the 2nd, 3rd, and 5th grade classrooms that signed up to accept our projects. So it made it engaging for them, gave them an audience, something that they wanted to do, and it showed me that yes, you have a deep understanding of this standard. And not only with assessment as well, then they have choice in this. I didn't tell her that she had to do this. We gave them the guidelines of what they had to show and represent that they understood to show that standard, and they had to teach it to an elementary classroom. But they had, she had the option to make a poster. If that was the best way you could show me what you know, then make a poster. But however you can show me what you know was the point, and through the device she was able to run with that. And we see that with a lot of our students. they're really able to demonstrate their knowledge. Turn it back over to Mr. Connors. Thank you.
That's our presentation. As a district, we have many things that we can be proud of. Mary talked a little bit about some of the recognitions we received. We have several State of Illinois recognitions for spotlight schools and things like that. Mary's school received a national title recognition. We're an Apple Distinguished School, so we received Apple's highest honor. We have schools like mine that have engaged outside organizations that gave us $1 million because they believed what we're doing. What am I missing? Our health and wellness activities are outstanding. We've received Goldwood's distinction for the Healthier U.S. Schools Challenge with 6 of our 8 elementary schools. The other 2 received silver just because they couldn't qualify based on how many lunches they served. And to give you an idea, out of the 10 schools in our state, 12 in our state, 6 of them came from our district. We have so many things going really well for us, but at the end of the day, we still need to get better. We still need to not necessarily be so happy with ourselves that we're hurting our hands, patting ourselves on our backs. We need to continue to get better using the data that we're seeing to help our students learn and achieve more. And that's where our focus is. So with that, I'd like to open it up to any questions that anybody in the audience may have for any of us, and certainly we have several school board members sitting with us as well. Yes, ma'am. Okay, so the question is, who owns the hardware and how do we go about funding it? The district owns the hardware. We're not a bring your own device district. And how do we go about funding it was a couple of things. First, we made it a priority. Through that DAISY organization, through their recommendations, we really chose to make it a priority for us. Second, one thing that our district has done, our district office staff is really small. Every principal in our district has some district responsibilities. So it's not ordinary to have a principal of a school also be the HR director, or the principal of another school be the director of assessment. But what we did was we made our district office smaller, saved on some of those salaries, and we were able to push that into this type of program. We've also looked to be as efficient as we possibly can in several other areas. You heard us talk a little bit about trying to be paperless to save resources. Those are the types of things that we try and do. It's expensive, but we also really believe that with a population like ours that low income, minority, they don't always get out to have the opportunity to develop the background knowledge that more affluent students have. So by having this piece of technology in their hands, we can bring the world to them. So that's how we're trying to do it. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Well, it applies more to the high school, but how do you allow kids to bring their own mobile devices to the high school and use them?
He asked, his question was, how does this apply to the high school? We're a K-8 district. I will say that our high school, we've been applying some pressure on them because it has been, I think it's safe to say, a nightmare when you have students come through our school district having this type of technology the last few years and then go to a high school that hasn't had that. From what I understand, next year they are anticipating all of their freshman students to be able to continue with that.
So do you allow any of your 7th and 8th graders to use their own mobile devices or not?
We have in the past, before we got some of this technology. There's not as much of a need anymore, but I do know that there are times where students are bringing in some iPods and some of their phone type stuff. They're probably doing that to work out in PE more than anything. But certainly with the iPods, with the cameras, I know that some teachers use that stuff for scavenger hunts, some of those types of things. But it really is decreased.
But you don't prohibit it.
We don't. Yes, sir. Okay. He asked why we went and chose Apple as our device. A couple of things. Before we chose what device, our district did go out on an extensive information finding fact mission, if you will. We went to 2 or 3 districts to see what they were using. And I think a couple things with Apple. Number one, what you said, Apple having a closed system, so all of their programs being integrated in certainly appealed to us. The second thing that appealed to us was the strength of the machines. They seem to be built much better than some of the PC counterparts. The third thing, I believe, was Apple provided a pretty competitive lease option for us as well.
You're watching the Illinois Channel, an independent nonprofit corporation formed to provide gavel-to-gavel coverage of Illinois state government and other public affairs events taking place across Illinois.